Okay, I think we have most people here, so we're going to get started. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. We're very, very happy to have you here for the first part of our stakeholder engagement series on electrification and decarbonization workforce transition. The intent with this series, and it is still in the process of being formed, the reason we're here today is to kind of help figure out what this will look like moving forward. But we intend this to be a 3 to 4 part engagement series where stakeholders such as you all are able to help us understand on the ground what this transition needs to look like. Next slide. So we want to start off with just stating some outcomes and goals that we're hoping to achieve through this series. The first one is informing. We want to fill you all in on the city's decarbonization goals and the plan that we have to move towards those. The policies that are coming as a product of this plan are what will be driving, at least from the city's side, part of this move towards decarbonization and electrification and the shifts that we'll be seeing in the workforce arena. We also want to inform on partnerships and resources that are available through this transition currently and what needs to be developed in the meantime. Secondly, we want to consult and discuss. That's what we're here today to do mainly. So we want stakeholders to be able to share their viewpoints, experience, and concerns, and collectively identify needs and solutions to move forward from these. And thirdly, we would like to use this space to build relationships. We have a wonderfully broad array of stakeholders here today, and we're excited to be virtually sharing space between everyone so that we can start to build those cross-sector partnerships and be resources to each other. We also want to identify who else should be at the table moving forward that isn't here today. So very quickly, our agenda, we'll just be going through some introductions and context so you understand why we're here and the projects that are catalyzing this convening. We are going to go into discussion. We'll have 25-minute breakout rooms, and then we'll reconvene for a report back from those very briefly. We'll talk about next steps and who else should be here, like I said. And then conclusion, based on this discussion, we will be using this to form the rest of this engagement stakeholder series. So it's wonderful that you all are here to help us figure out what this is going to look like moving forward. Very quickly, these are the convening actors that helped form this series. So this was a wonderful cross-departmental effort within the city. It came from our sustainability program, our economic and workforce development department, and our Department of Transportation. And then the external partners that we're working with here today are Rising Sun Center for Opportunity and the Green Lining Institute as a supporting entity.
Okay, great. So thank you, Kiara, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Shayna Hirschfield Gold. I'm the climate coordinator for the City of Oakland. And I'm going to be taking you all through the first little bit here of content on that info that Kiara was mentioning. And I do just want to say thank you so much for devoting part of your Tuesday to this meeting, to this very important discussion. I apologize, we're not going to be able to go around the room and do introductions with everyone because we are blessed to have almost 80 people, it looks like, who have decided that that this is an important discussion to be part of. So again, thank you all. I mean, there will be small breakout groups, like Kiara said, where we can introduce ourselves to each other a bit. So at a high level, this conversation is coming from is just kind of the very basics of the City of Oakland's climate goals. So I just want to start with that. This Oakland City Council had said that by which was last year, we needed to reduce our greenhouse emissions 36%. We haven't fully done the analysis on that, but it does look like we hit that target. By 2030, that's 9 years from now, we need to reduce our emissions 56%. And by 2050, we need to reduce our emissions 83%. All of those targets are relative to our emission levels in 2005. Decarbonization which is basically a fancy way of saying getting the carbon out, getting the fossil fuel use out of our activities. That is a major framework in work that we're doing. And buildings and transportation make up the vast majority of our local emissions. Electrification is a major piece of decarbonization. We're very fortunate in Oakland and Alameda County to have East Bay Community Energy as our utility. And what that means is that electricity that we're getting, that almost all of us, probably all of us are getting in our buildings, is almost completely clean. And by 2030, that electricity is going to be 100% carbon-free and renewable. So that means that anything we're pulling from that grid for our buildings or for electric vehicles, et cetera, is going to be coming from that fully clean electric grid. So that's kind of the, that's what electrification means, is moving from fossil fuels to power the work that we're doing to away from that and to electricity. Decarbonization is a little broader than that, because decarbonization holds all of the different things that go into that ecosystem of sustainable and renewable energy. So it includes other things like renewable energy and energy efficiency and how we use the electricity that we're getting. So it's a little bit more of a holistic term. We can go to the next slide. But I do want to say that climate and decarbonization are really just one part of the story. Our buildings and our transportation system really entails deep advancements in each of those 4 categories that are listed there in the upper left. If we decarbonize well, if we electrify right, we're going to have major advancements in public health within our communities, in safety, in equity, and yes, in the environment. So a lot of this stems from Oakland's adopted Equitable Climate Action Plan. That plan is a 10-year roadmap to get us to the 2030 emissions reduction goal. There are 40 actions across 7 sectors in that plan. And again, decarbonization is a major theme within multiple sectors in there. The actions in there, again, support that whole ecosystem of clean energy, which includes energy resilience, efficiency, sustainable mobility. Fossil fuel removal is one piece of that, again, but it's a major goal. So when we do it right, we're getting gas out of our buildings, because we know that children who grow up in homes with gas stoves have a 40% increased risk of getting asthma. We know that piping gas into our homes increases the risk of fire and burns and combustion in general, and earthquakes or at other times. But we also know that we don't do sustainable energy right if we only look at an electrification in a silo, or if we don't attend to any sort of focus on sustainable energy. We know that a lot of our population is vulnerable to high bills, to unmitigated power shutoffs, and things like that. So we really need to look at these transitions in a holistic framework. Transportation is the exact same thing. We know that burning fossil fuels in our vehicles contributes to high levels of air pollution. We know that that leads to a lot of health issues, particularly in more vulnerable communities, particularly in DP and in West Oakland.
It looks like Shayna might have frozen for a second. I'll see if she comes back on. Sorry about this, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us in this process. I can pick up from this slide, and we can wait for Shayna to hop back on. So going off of what Shayna was just saying, equity needs to be not only a co-benefit, but it is the main driving force behind our climate action. The climate action of the City of Oakland is the driving action of our climate action are these equity points. Next slide. So throughout the ECAP, we tie in 4 core equity considerations: economic security, housing security, public health, and green jobs, which Shana was just speaking to. And today we're focusing primarily on green jobs, although all of these tie together. When we're electrifying buildings, we are ensuring that those buildings are both safe to live in and also creating job opportunities moving forward. Next slide. So in order to start thinking about this transition, we want to fill in a bit from the city's perspective what we are doing as an entity to be driving these shifts. So some of you might be familiar that Oakland joined 40 plus local jurisdictions this past year in December of 2020, passing a new construction all electric ordinance. So this is a REACH code ensuring that all new buildings are all electric, phasing out natural gas infrastructure from the new building stock. This aligns with action B1 from our Equitable Climate Action Plan. The next step after electrifying all new buildings is to move into electrifying all existing buildings, which is a much larger feat and very important. And that's going to be one of the driving forces of creating many of the new green jobs that we're hoping to see here in Oakland. So our ECAP, the Equitable Climate Action Plan, lines up that we need to have a roadmap to do this by 2022. And we need to have all buildings electrified by 2040, which is a huge lift, but also attainable. And it's attainable through conversations like this, where we can prepare our workforce to take on this very big transition. In addition to this, we're thinking about the transportation and mobility sector. So alongside our buildings moves, we are also having our zero emission vehicle action plan being drafted by our Department of Transportation, who's here in partnership today, informing this workshop. So that plan is allotted to be completed by 2021. And this plan aims to increase the adoption of electric vehicles and e-mobility in places where active mobility is not an option. It sets ambitious goals for installing infrastructure and coordinating with other land use and mobility options. And we see these two conversations of workforce development for transportation and for buildings as very closely tied, since oftentimes this infrastructure is interconnected. Next slide. We'll hand it over to our Economic and Workforce Development Department to talk about how decarbonization ties into their efforts.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Micah Hinkle. I'm the Deputy Director of Economic and Workforce Development. I'm joined here today with Lizandra Dial, our Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board, Alex McBride, our Chief Resiliency Officer, and Marsha Murrington from our TCC team. The city's approach on workforce development is really tying into a majority of the efforts among the city. In particular, looking at what we have on the decarbonization really is kind of the first steps as we look at job transitions. And we've seen this kind of happen on a policy direction over the past decade plus, but this is really that kind of starting position for that conversation to say, what do our industry partners need? How do we approach this with our workforce training and job opportunities, and really what the business needs are? Because there's going to be a great need that's been identified, and especially with the city's aggressive climate goals, we need to meet. So this is really the starting position, but luckily we're really focusing on this as a group effort amongst our engaged partners to help make this happen. The city's not going to be able to make this lift alone. So really the participation from our workforce sectors, our employers and our job generators, and really identifying the shift that needs to happen to make this occur for really a better tomorrow, as been described there. With that, I'm going to turn over to Rising Sun, which is one of our workforce partners.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Daryl Lambert. My pronouns are he, him. I am the program manager of clean economy initiatives at Rising Sun. I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of our organization, a little bit of background. Our mission is building career pathways for economic equity and climate resilience. We're a nonprofit that's been in existence since 1994. We serve the greater San Francisco Bay Area. We have offices right here in Oakland and also in Stockton. The photo on that slide is actually of our building right there on the corner of 36th and San Pablo. And we are very proud to be in Oakland, serving Oakland and the Greater Bay Area. We have two primary programs. First and foremost is our Opportunity Build program, which is a state-recognized MC3, which stands for Multi-Craft Core Curriculum Pre-Apprenticeship Program. In this program, we offer 10 weeks of in-classroom hands-on training around the basics of construction, math review, soft skills development. On top of that, we do 12 months plus of job placement, supportive services, full wraparound services until folks are placed and beyond. We also work very hard to prioritize women and justice system impacted individuals for our training and open up pathways into high quality careers in the building and construction trades. We also have a youth program that's known as Climate Careers, and it provides green job opportunities for young folks between the ages of 15 and 24. We train them to go out into people's homes and help them save money on their utility bills. The service is called a greenhouse call, and it's basically a residential energy audit where they walk through the home with the resident and sort of look for opportunities to help them, improve their efficiency and lower their impact on the environment. We see it as the first step of a household on their broader efficiency and water conservation journey. At the same time, we're providing a very wonderful youth development experience where these young folks are getting real world hands-on experience interacting with real world customers. They also have the opportunity to explore different career pathways through our paid weekly professional development workshops. And in those workshops, they also get resume writing skills, cover letter writing skills, interview skills, and also financial literacy. And to tell everybody about a new project that we're starting this summer, which is very related to decarbonization, I'm going to pass it to Julia Hatton, our CEO.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Julia. Like Daryl said, I'm Rising Sun CEO. And as you can see from what Daryl shared, you can see that Rising Sun's mission is at this intersection of equity, climate, and jobs. And so that's part of the reason that we're here today. Shana also spoke to the fact that California is investing in a post-carbon economy. This work is happening. Over 40 cities in our region alone have already adopted these codes and policies that reduce our reliance on natural gas in buildings. The California Public Utilities Commission has the Build and Tech programs that are putting $200 million over 4 years into 2 pilot programs in residential electrification. There was a recent article in grist.com that talked about electrification policy as a significant engine for job creation. And then of course, there's the UCLA Luskin Center for Innovation and Inclusive Economics study that did the analysis and said that decarbonizing California building stock could create over 100,000 permanent jobs. So this work is happening. We know that jobs are going to be created. Daryl, could you go to the next slide, please? But our priority is to make sure that green jobs are good jobs. It's not enough to just say that these jobs are going to be created. We need to make sure that they are accessible, that they're offering genuine opportunities for folks, especially entry-level workers, disadvantaged workers, and that they are providing pathways out of poverty. So, these investments are a huge opportunity, again, for job creation and economic equity, but only if we start with job quality and justice. And so when Rising Sun and our partners, when we talk about high road jobs, we're talking about jobs that offer family sustaining wages, jobs that offer benefits, jobs that offer career advancement and pathways that are clearly articulated, that offer worker voice, and that offer safety, provide safe working conditions. And then of course, there are the employer benefits too. These types of jobs improve job recruitment and attraction, and also employee retention. And then of course, there's the aspect of better work quality and persistence of energy benefits, which has been shown through multiple studies. So what we're really trying to do is make sure that we avoid some of the mistakes that have come through similar investments in the past, like through ERA, Weatherization investments, for example, created lots of jobs, but we know that those jobs weren't necessarily quality jobs. And indeed, that's actually why Rising Sun shifted from training folks for building performance and energy efficiency and weatherization jobs at the entry level and shifted to a focus on preparing folks for union careers in the building and construction trades. Next slide, please. So to launch this work, Rising Sun, along with over 20 partners, has been granted an opportunity through the California Workforce Development Board to lead a high road training partnership. The purpose of the CWDB's efforts in this area are to build back better with equity, climate, and jobs. So the project that we're undertaking is called the High Road to Residential Building Decarbonization, and it will start in June. And our goal here is to develop labor standards, high road labor standards for the residential building decarbonization sector, to understand what the regional labor market is, what the workforce issues are, what the training needs are, and again, to make sure that these are high quality jobs, accessible at the entry level, especially to disadvantaged workers in priority communities. One more slide. So Rising Sun in this project is acting as the fiscal agent, the convener, the project manager. As I mentioned, we have 20 plus partners. We have labor unions, contractors and employers, local governments, including the City of Oakland, public agencies, high road technical advisors, electrification technical advisors, EJ and equity organizations, course training and workforce development, and worker representatives as well in this project. So we are here today because we are here to join the City of Oakland's process. Today is about the City of Oakland's process that you heard about from Shana and Micah, but we want to leverage today's feedback to inform this larger regional HRTP effort that Rising Sun will be leading beginning this summer and lasting over the next 22 months or so. So we're really looking forward to getting that feedback today and hoping that this feedback kickstarts the conversation, not just for the City of Oakland, but again, for the larger region that is also looking at these questions.
Thank you very much, Julia. So now we're going to pivot our approach for today's workshop into the breakout session, where we're going to give everybody a chance to speak their mind, talk a little about what's going on, and really express what keeps you up at night and what your concerns are as we look at how decarbonization is going to take place in the City of Oakland. Just want to reiterate that the goals of this portion are to ensure that the conversation around electrification, decarbonization, and also the workforce opportunities is being framed appropriately. We want to hear from you all that are on this call, that are in those breakout rooms, about how you feel this conversation should be framed. Who should be at the table, whose voices need to be centered. Also, we want to begin to establish sort of a collective vision for what a successful transition toward decarbonization of buildings and transportation in the City of Oakland needs to look like. Above all, we really just want to provide a platform for all the stakeholder voices that are here to express your concerns, frame your questions, and provide input to how this process moves forward. So we're still in the stage of really just having a lot of questions, more questions than answers. So please, put those questions out there. Bring your questions to these breakout groups. We want to hold this as an open space for your thoughts and your questions to make sure that they are fully included in this process. So what comes out of this conversation as we move into the breakout portion will really shape the rest of this workshop series and the rest of this process as we figure out the best way to address the issue areas and topics that are raised here today. So I invite you to speak openly, honestly, candidly, as we move into breakout rooms. Kiara, do you have instructions for the next steps?
Yes, breakout rooms are being made right now. If we can hang out here for just another second. Once you are in your breakout rooms, you all will be moving through a quick discussion and have 25 minutes. Please take a quick moment to introduce yourself when you get there, but make sure to get to the questions. And thank you for hanging in there for a second while I finish organizing this.
while Kiara is doing that, I just want to apologize for my internet cutting out earlier. I'm back, and I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Kiara for stepping up and all of the other presenters. And yeah, just to reiterate that what we're going through today is both setting up the rest of this series. We're looking at 3 to 4 sessions, as well as directly informing these upcoming plans that Kiara mentioned earlier. So the City of Oakland's roadmap for decarbonizing the rest of our entire building stock over the next 20 years, and for moving to a transportation system that is fully based on zero emission vehicles by 2045. So this work that we're doing, this is real work, and it's real work to make sure that this transition works for everybody, and particularly works for the communities that are most impacted. I often like to say that we're doing real stuff already. The city has already installed curbside electric vehicle chargers. We're already electrifying our own municipal buildings. We're already requiring that all new private construction is all electric, but who's doing that work? Who's getting those contracts when the city is doing stuff? When we're putting in curbside electric vehicle chargers, we want the companies that are getting those contracts to be Oakland companies. We want to make sure that they are hiring and retaining Oaklanders. So this is a really valuable space right now. And so again, just thank you all for being here.
So breakout rooms are open. Please join a room. Okay.
Kiara,
Yes, hi. Oh,
put
let's
it in the
see.
wrong room.
Yes.
I was like, wait.
I know. I can't
It's
search
okay.
names.
It's okay. We are fine. We are fine. We are all trying to navigate this world, and it's been a year, and we're still trying to figure it out.
Are you able to see the breakout rooms tab at the bottom of the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. If you click that, are you able to join?
I'm 2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you. I didn't even.
And for folks who are still here, do you need help getting into a breakout room?
bit abrupt. It feels like somebody's reaching out and just pulling you back in. And I apologize for that, but thank you. I know that there was a lot of great discussion, at least in the groups that I was in. So to hear a little bit about that, facilitators, note takers, if you haven't already, start to think through what the top 3 takeaways were from this discussion. And we will go ahead and start with group 1. Feel free to unmute and just really high level, keep it like 90 seconds, 2 minutes to report out if you can.
All right, will do. So this is Kirby Olson from Department of Transportation reporting on group 1. We had a fantastic conversation. Some of the top 3 takeaways. One was the question of whether the city will do a project labor agreement around these, in these areas. Another was what funding is the city providing? And like other aspects, can this be included in the city's budget? So there's sort of ongoing secure funding for this work. And then the third, this is related to, the work, this series moving forward, was, a need for networking opportunities among the participants that are here so they can connect independently in their work. And then the question of whether in future meetings there will be sort of committees or more sort of focused on certain topics so that folks that are in those topic areas can meet and work on them. And that's all for us. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead and go to group 2.
Unmute myself here. So group 2, we talked about our top 3 was one was access and influencing public policy, and how does kind of the layperson actually get involved in that process of influencing the public policy. We also talked about getting people into pre-apprenticeship programs. And that is crucial, that we introduce the pre-apprenticeship programs. We know that some exist. And then finally, it was around K-12, we talked a lot about K-12, making sure there's a pipeline. How do we market these jobs? How do we put the trades back in the school so that someone is not being introduced to a tool at graduation, but that is a part of their focus? And how do we just make it more, for lack of a better word, sexy, for people to understand this is important, because there's, our country has a focus and push on college. And we know college will not be for everyone. And so how do we introduce this as a pipeline into, high wage jobs? Did I miss anything, Suji?
No, you covered it, but one thing I'd like to add to your last point is this conversation about a K-12 pipeline and the need to engage schools and educators in this workforce development conversation was another key takeaway. Thank you, Lizandra.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, group 2. Let's go ahead and go to group 3.
Hi, I'm Marna Schwartz from the City of Berkeley. I was in group 3 with a great group of folks. And the thing that kept everybody—
Can you speak louder?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Louder. Your voice is very soft.
The thing that kept everybody up at night was equity, and how communities of color that are climate impacted engage in the efforts and policy work around electrification of buildings and transportation, and considerations about how to deeply engage with folks who are most impacted and how to ensure that their lives can be improved. There was a lot of discussion about learning from past climate justice and job learnings from years back, and the need to look beyond construction. For example, to support frontline engineers and planners who will be able to do work in lower income neighborhoods where there are more infrastructure needs. And then there were a number of questions as it related to the last question around the process and the expectations for these workshops and upcoming workshops around whether there would be a set of goals that we would all collectively agree on, and a group of objectives that we could commit ourselves to. There was discussion around renters and how difficult it is to increase to do electrification improvements that might increase housing costs, And again, a need to build off best practices, not to make some of the same mistakes from previous workforce programs, and a need to be more creative this round. Group 3, Marcia, do you want to add anything?
No, you actually nailed it all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Group 3. We're gonna go to Group 4 now, and that was actually the group that I was in, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the lead on just summarizing the takeaways really quickly. Number one, I think this was definitely, there was a lot of agreements here, and this was the hottest topic that we talked about, is being sure that the individuals from the impacted communities themselves are at the table. Going down to the welfare office, going down to every community, knocking on doors and recruiting folks to come to focus groups and be part of this conversation. And also making sure that those individuals have a pathway to be included in those benefits, the wealth benefits of the employment, of the technology transfer. Number two was ensuring that there is this is sort of a two-part, so there's like a 2.2A and 2B, funding for training for workforce, for the workforce. That's limited and that's challenging, and then also funding related to the public education aspect of it, talking about the technology, talking about the cost, talking about how to access it. Number three, there was discussion around infrastructure resilience, with public safety power shutoffs, other wildfires, other sort of shocks, is making sure that we have resilient infrastructure that keeps us up at night. And then this is sort of a fourth, but I thought it was important to add, was really defining the bench, quote unquote, those who aren't at work but need to get to work, and this can be an opportunity for them, really queuing that up so that it's easier for contractors and employers to connect with those folks and get them out there and bring them into it. Miss Margaret, did you have something to add?
Yes, I'm also in our group 4. I said that we need to be where the most impacted and vulnerable. We need to be at the welfare office. We need to be at the jails. We need to be at the social services offices. We need to be bringing those who do not have all these other disparities to be included in this, and having focus groups with those people, and that they also find out who is at the table, could be a leader to come to this table. I think that needs to be expedited ASAP.
Thank you for adding that, Miss Margaret. And that sort of concludes our high level takeaways from Group 4. We'll go ahead and go to Group 5 now.
Hi, so one of the takeaways from Group 5 was the economics, including just discussing the cost of electrification as well as just transition for the fossil fuel workers. Relating to that, we also discussed a lot about making sure that people that are interested in electrification have the opportunity to learn about those jobs and have the opportunity to actually get training and then go on to work in electrification. And one of the points that was brought up repeatedly was the need to think holistically about the electrification space, as well as explain what electrification actually means when talking about buildings and transportation, because they are so often siloed that someone working in transportation might not necessarily understand building electrification and vice versa. Julia, was there anything you would like to add?
No, you covered it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and go to Group 6 now.
Yes, we had a fantastic group, covered a lot of ground. So I'm just going to hit a few high points. One was an interesting note about the role of manufacturers, that equipment product manufacturers do have their own types of infrastructure for training, and maybe bringing them into the room is going to be important. The role of smaller contractors, smaller businesses, and smaller contracts is really important for building this workforce locally. Incentives and rebates are really valuable, but it often takes a long time for small contractors to get paid. And often, especially government contracts to do work at scale, comes with hefty requirements for insurance and other bonding and other types of requirements, which are just really hard for small contractors to shoulder. So bringing them into the work is very challenging. There was a big conversation around continuity and certainty in general, making sure that there is going to be, a stable, steady flow of projects and contracts so that individuals and small businesses feel comfortable kind of jumping on this bandwagon. And then related to that, there was a request for the city to do some research into what is needed in terms of the magnitude and specific types of jobs that are going to be needed for this transition over the next 10 and 20 years. So how many jobs are we looking at? What types and what sectors at what level of education? That was pretty strongly voiced. And, related to that, what are the funding opportunities? And I'll just note that we didn't want to be talking too much today. We wanted to have more space for discussion, but we will in the next session go into greater depth with the presentation on what the funding opportunities and rebates and incentive programs are that are available right now, because that's not all of those are marketed as well as they should be. So we will include some of that, but in terms of the magnitude of job potential, that's something that we need to work on. And then just plus one to something that another group said earlier around bringing in higher education and K-12 and STEM and making sure that they are part of this conversation, part of the transition. Anything I missed from group 6? Okay, I think we're good.
Great, thank you.
Hey, yeah, I'll be reporting for group 7. We also had a great conversation, although it was very brief. Our takeaways here is really framed around the idea that we will be having a series of conversations following this one. And so we talked about wanting and needing actual residents, the trainees, to be part of this conversation. Folks also want to talk about funding for existing buildings for retrofitting and how do we electrify our existing building stock. Exploring opportunities to partner with labor through project labor agreements. What kinds of jobs and salary gaps are there? What are we, what are we really talking about, right? Like what kind of information that will point us to what transitioning to decarbonization means for workers. So with jobs, with salaries. And then the last thing that we took away from this is how do we design and provide support for programs that train our communities. Did I miss anything, Megan?
That was great, Carmelita.
Great, thank you, group 7. We have about 5 minutes or so. So for anybody who feels like they have something to add that wasn't quite captured in a summary or something that maybe you didn't discuss in a breakout room, this would be a great opportunity to go ahead and raise your hand, unmute yourself, and bring it to the table.
Looks like Jack has his hand up.
Yeah, there was one point I thought was really important that I heard in our group, which is that a lot of small minority contractors need to be involved with this, but a lot of them don't really pay very high wages to their employees. So how are we going to solve that? I didn't hear an answer to it, but I just think it's an important question to grapple with.
Thank you. Miss Margaret also, I think, has her hand up.
In relationship to what Jack just said, we need to have somebody give support, financial support to those small contractors around bonding and funding, just period.
Thank you. See, John and then Chris.
Yeah, I just want to echo and reinforce observations made by folks like Ms. Margaret. This is a pretty good and diverse group for the first workshop, but would like to see a lot more on the ground diverse representation from community members to get them plugged in, since this is actually a momentum building effort. And the sooner we can recruit everyone in, then the sooner we can, everything can start, the wheels can start spinning on the ground and things can start moving forward.
Thank you.
And we also need to have somebody, a facilitation that understands how to be more including staff that has a background in understanding what are the building blocks for relationships and trust, because that has not been established. And then also, how are we developing partner agreements with individuals to be able to support that type of action? That as of right now, everybody, this has been such a hurried process. I don't know everybody. And I probably do need to know everybody, but I got to have some kind of grounding of how we're building trust and relationships to move this.
Good to meet you, Christian.
Yeah, quite rightly, and much of the focus of this discussion has been on the building trades. But there's also whole other industries that are in the process of decarbonizing, and they need the same sort of things that we're talking about in terms of the building trades, in terms of training and education. AC Transit's been running hydrogen fuel cell buses for about 20 years and have our own training facilities, et cetera. But the Air Resources Board is in the process of forcing trucking to go to zero emission, either battery electric or fuel cell electric. And that's another whole huge opportunity for jobs. There are lots of, truck stops and diesel repair places around that are going to need to convert themselves to zero emission. And I think as people come up, that's another avenue that they need to be pointed to.
Thank you. We'll go to Tim and then go back to John.
Tim, you're muted.
Sorry about that. So 2 points. One is just to build on what Chris was just saying, that, if you look, for instance, at the Marine Clean Energy or groups like that, they don't just provide energy. I mean, they don't, just run power plants and things like that. They have call centers. So they're non-construction related activities. And we can ask, are those being unionized? Are they what are the pay structure for that kind of work? And I think that has to be part of the conversation. And then a second, and I realize this is a segue to a completely different topic, but to get to the question of the small businesses and local contractors, making sure that their employees have the opportunity to get the training they need to actually do better work, and giving them opportunities to potentially move into the union world and actually provide their members with long-term good quality construction careers. That's something that the trades are very interested in working with them on.
Thank you. We'll go John, then Paul, and then we have to move on to the next portion of the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, just to reprise, representative from AC Transit, this is actually an area I work on. I was involved on the advocacy on the truck rule, and now we're moving on post 25 passenger car rules. But our shop, besides working on grid issues, working on hydrogen, and I know everything's very focused on electric transportation and electrifying buildings, but if you think about a zero carbon economy in the future, you're going to need a replacement for petrochemicals. And you can do that by capturing CO2 from the air and using hydrogen to make the molecules that you need to make the various petrochemicals. So hydrogen is going to be important, but for that, and also right now, it's still like the most practical application for long haul in transportation is hydrogen powered vehicles. And it's the same basic principle as batteries. It's electrochemistry. So you're not burning anything. You're just moving electrons and protons around to generate power to move electric motors. So just want to put in another plug. I mentioned it in our little group 6, but hydrogen, we're just on the very early parts of the on-ramp for the hydrogen economy as a partner to the electrified economy, because that's the other part of electrification. It also has grid storage applications and other things. So just want to again put in a little flag there for not forgetting about where we need to start building in hydrogen thinking, not just straight up, plug in the wall electrical thinking.
Thank you, John. We'll go to Paul now, and then we'll move on to the next portion.
Yeah, thank you. All these ideas are terrific, and they're absolutely critical. And I'm just glad that this group has the platform to express what's required and needed for the community. It's to connecting with those who typically get overlooked regarding these jobs. An example of something that we've known had some success just on a grassroots level was, we were able to get a third of this training program for electric vehicle network training. A third of the participants, fellows, were recently incarcerated. And they all finished the program after 8 weeks and got OSHA certified. What happened was a third of them were then able to maintain a career and now are still hired doing this type of work. And one thing I know that how it happened was it was literal outreach with halfway houses, with some of the universities. Kind of everyone was recently incarcerated. It was a beautiful blend of college students as well. And as all these adults trying to see if they wanted to be part of this. And so it wasn't just one segment, but it was everyone intertwined. And out of 2 cohorts, 60 people, a third were hired. Some were the folks who were just recently let out. Some were college students, and some have started companies, but it was reaching out to the tech businesses that are in the area, especially if you're in Silicon Valley, there's many of them, and asking them to participate in the job training programs. Because I guarantee you all these startups, they're looking to hire these folks, but they don't know who to partner with as well to find the talent and recruit because they're so busy making the technology. So we were able to participate because whoever led that charge reached out to us. And then it created a program where now we've hired a couple of them. So I just think that was a methodology that worked and proved true on a grassroots level, and it grew to be something big. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Let's go back to Shana and Kiara to close this out. Take us to the next portion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daryl. Very quick, a couple housekeeping things before we close us out. So thank you all for the main takeaways. We are going to spend some time internally synthesizing those, and we will get materials out from this meeting, which will include recordings and notes to you within the next week. And within that, we'll be looking at the feedback that we've gotten here to help us shape what the sessions will look like moving forward. Additionally, I'm going to drop a link in the chat to a feedback form for folks, since we had very limited discussion time. These could go for 2 hours if we wanted to take that time. We want to make sure that everyone has a chance to say what they are taking away from this conversation, what they want moving forward, and if they didn't have space to give any feedback that they're still thinking through. So we know post surveys aren't always the most fun, but it will take a very quick second and will help us tangibly figure out what we want to do moving forward in this series based on your feedback. Additionally, we want to bump a couple of training opportunities. I believe Bayren already dropped this in the chat earlier, but reiterating, there is a Bayren contractor training tomorrow. We will also send out with the resources. There is a Google Sheet of live and on-demand training resources for contractors. I will pass it back to Shana for closing out.
Thank you, Kiara. And just to note that Jennifer West from Stop Waste and from the Bayren program, that's the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, she just dropped the registration link for tomorrow's training into the chat. So if you want to access that, please do, and we'll send it out as well. So I want to thank everyone for coming here. Rising Sun is a critical partner, one of many to be sure, but this High Roads training partnership that they are working on stands to bring so much deeper understanding and expanded partnerships into not just Oakland, but this whole region. I'm really excited about this partnership, and Oakland, Berkeley, and San Francisco, these 3 cities who are all in this meeting are all part of that partnership. Our Economic and Workforce Development Department, also you heard from Micah, you heard from Lysandra. We are going to get a deeper dive from them in our next session about the many resources, workforce, business development, just pandemic recovery resources from that department that they bring to Oakland. That'll come in the next session. So that's one exciting thing to look forward to. It also looks like the California State Strategic Growth Council probably be bringing a presentation to the next session as well, so that we'll be able to hear about their resources and programs that they're bringing to, again, to support this transition. We are looking to have our next meeting in about a month. So the end of April, we will be sending that out shortly. I'm sorry that we don't, it's going to work to send a doodle poll to everybody, especially considering the many suggestions that came in today about other folks that we need to come in. So we will we'll do our best to send out a note by the end, within a week, about when the next session is going to come. Again, like we said, we're looking at 3 or 4 sessions total coming from this. So with that, I want to thank everyone for coming. And from the partners, Rising Sun, Economic and Workforce Development, is anything that we've missed that needs to be mentioned before we close? Okay, hearing none. Let's give everyone 2 minutes of their lives back. Thank you all, and I hope to see you all in a month. And here's our contact info if you need any follow-up. Thank you.